homesteaders. It is the new year. It's springtime. It's official. Just had the new moon after the equinox, which means that spring is officially kicked off, and we have got all kinds of projects to do out here today. I know it's been a while since I've been on here. Laura's been doing her apothecary stuff, and I have just been busy with projects. I know we owe you guys a kitchen video, and we haven't gotten it done yet, but that's because we've had all kinds of stuff going on out here on the homestead. So behind me here, you'll see the beginning of what will be a potting barn for our garden. That's where the seed starts are going to start happening. We have kind of maxed out the space in the greenhouse, and a lot of that stuff's getting ready to come outside. And that will be like a passive greenhouse. It will let light in so that the seed starts get enough light, but it won't get as hot that they scorch up in there. So that's where everything will start. And then it will come down into our Back to Eden area, which has been freshly scratched up from the chickens. We're waiting for the last frost date for all that to get planted, but you can see behind me there, we now have irrigation in here. So that is another thing that has been set up. And let's see, what else do we got going on? We have some new additions. The other day, a couple friends of ours, Shauna and Chris, brought us some new babies that makes it feel even more like a homestead. I'm gonna have to get a hat on, my hair looks wild. Yeah, there they are. So that is Juliet, and her baby girl is down there hiding behind the little ducky pond. I don't know if you can see her. She's right there. That is Creamsicle. She is an absolute sweetheart. So they've got a little goat lean-to over there that is getting finished off. It's open from behind, so they can kind of come up the hill and get some shelter from any of the storms and stuff. But that'll be getting finished up. And the big thing, the really big thing that we have been promising forever, is we're going to give you the rundown of the Aquaponics system today. Today we are finally going to retrofit the system and make some, thank you, we're going to make some little improvements that ought to create just better growing conditions for our plants. We're going to be able to grow stuff a little bit faster, have less trouble with food, which is currently flowing into our system, and we'll tell you why when we get into the design. But yeah, that's basically what today is going to be about. We're going to jump in that greenhouse. We're going to talk about the system, why it's designed the way it is, and what changes we're making. And we'll give you a little bit of rundown on some of the components and how to construct your own system as we go. So stay tuned. It's going to be a busy day. Alright guys, aquaponics. What is it? Why do we want it? It's where we're going to start today before we get into the system. So aquaponics is really just its own biological system. It's a closed loop circuit. It's really the combination of hydroponics and aquaculture. Aquaculture being the farming of fish, hydroponics being the growth of vegetation off of water with chemical inputs. In this system, our fish are the chemical inputs. The only input we really put into the system is the food. The fish take the food in, they create waste, it comes out in the form of ammonia. We have nitrifying bacteria colonies that are established within this system that convert that ammonia into a form that the plants can actually feed off of. And when those plants feed off of that waste that comes through the system, they actually clean the water for the fish. They are our filter. So the benefit, the why of aquaponics, it's really an awesome type of growing for us because it allows us to grow in all seasons. And when it gets cold out here, we can keep the greenhouse warm enough that we can pretty much grow anything we want all year long. I think we harvested the last of our tomatoes in the middle of January this winter. So those are obviously gone, but you can see it's booming in here. We've got broccoli, we've got sugar snap peas. Laura's got a couple flowers going that are going to be going outside. Basically an apothecary bed here in front of me with all kinds of basils and oregano, all kinds of herbs, thyme, rosemary. Broccoli's in the back. We've got strawberries down here. Strawberries in a deep water culture system behind me. Some strawberries up top. We've got sugar snap peas climbing up the trellises over there. So it's beginning of April and people are just getting their seed starts ready. We have been eating and supplementing our intake out of our own greenhouse. And this is really, we're only a year and 2 months into when we started this system. So everything that you see that's in here that's going now, it's only taken us a year to get to this point from when this was literally an old tin covered carport. Other benefits of aquaponics is that we're growing protein and vegetation in the same system. When our fish in the tank room, and we'll get in there in a little bit, when they get to the right size where they're a platable fish, we'll pull them out and we'll have protein out of the system as well as the vegetation. The other thing is it's a really passive way to grow. We actually grow all this is run off of a single water pump. We have a pump down here that pumps up, and everything is gravity fed through all these different types of systems. So it's a passive system for us. It doesn't take much energy to run it. The other thing is the efficiency of aquaponics. There have been studies that in an optimized aquaponics system, per square footage, you can actually yield 6 to 8 times as much crop as you would from traditional row crop farming. So high yield, high efficiency with low inputs, and you are also, again, you're getting the benefit of no chemicals, no fertilizers, and you get the protein. So I mean, it was just a really smart system for us to put in place. And again, the year-round growth is awesome. Plus the diversity of stuff that you can grow in here. We've got a lemon tree that's growing over there. It's not in the aquaponics system, but we use the greenhouse space, the extra greenhouse space we have for seedlings, the starts, plants we have from tropical plants that need to come inside. So it's just been a huge win-win for us. Now, let's get into what really makes this thing work. We'll top over into the tank room and we'll start where the engine per se is at for this whole system. Okay guys, so here is the engine room right here. This is where our tank is, and we've got some little guests here. These guys are also from our friends Chris and Shauna. Thank you guys if you're watching. These will be our next flock. But this is where the magic happens right here. These are our tanks, and these guys house 30 to 40 bluegill in each one of these tanks. Now I know some people are probably like, well, why do you have bluegill in there? And the answer to that question is because we know that they can sustain the temperature swings that we have in our state. So we struggled with our system at first. We had blue tilapia in here. They were good until it got cold. They died off, so we stuck rainbow trout in here. They were great until it got warm. 65 degrees, the dissolved oxygen levels were too low, and they started to die off. So we went with bluegill. They are a good fish. They're a hardy fish, and they might make their way to our plates. So anyways, what we've got in here, this is where our water is pumped in, hits these 3 T's into the tanks. The water level hits a certain point at the tank. It'll hit these drains here, and that is when it flows down to our filtration system over here. Now we've got a radial flow settler right here which separates the physical waste from the water. Once that separates, the water then goes to our fluidized filter here, which is where a lot of the nitrifying bacteria does its magic. It converts the ammonia waste into a form that the plants can eat once it gets down into the greenhouse. Now the issue is we are we're relying on 2 drains here. We've got the overflow drain here, and then we've got the standing pipe here. This is a lifting pipe on this middle drain. And the problem is that we've got 3 inlets, 3 outlets. All of them are 1.5 inch, but these 3 that drain out all share a 1.5 inch pipe. So it's just getting overloaded, and what's happening is the water level is getting up, and we're relying on our overflow drains to spit that water out into the deep water culture bed. And so what's happening is we're spilling food over into the system, and it's creating spikes in nitrates and some algae problems, and so we've got to handle this. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be increasing the drainage pipe, the shared drainage from our lifting stand pipes here. This 1.5 inch pipe here is going to get converted into a 3 inch pipe, and so 3 inch tees, 3 inch piping, 3 inch elbows, 3 inch filtration, plumbing, all the way through the door and out into the greenhouse, where gravity takes control and the plants all get their nutrition. So let's jump back out into the greenhouse and we'll talk about the setup out there. Okay, we are in the greenhouse. Now, earlier I said that we have a passive system. That is the one pump that pumps everything for this entire setup. Okay, with the exception, now we do have air pumps. We've got air stones, a diaphragm pump for air stones in each one of the IBC totes. Just increases the oxygen levels in those tanks. And then we have a piston drive pump in that fluidized filter that is on the other side of this wall right here that churns up all that media, that K2 media that we were talking about that the microbacteria is housed on. So, pump 1, right, goes up. It goes up into those T's. On the back side of this wall is where those IBC totes are. As the water gets high, it forces water up the lifting stand pipe or into the overfill drain. Overfill drain spits out over here and back into the DWC, which is also our sump tank right here. And then the ones that, the water that gets up the stand pipe and through the filtration comes down into that tube there, goes along these berry tubes up top, all the way around the greenhouse, and then comes down into our, these are our fill and drain beds, okay? So the water level fills up, and then when it gets to a certain point, it drains through a siphon that is at the end of these beds. These are bell siphons. They are automatic siphons, so once the water level gets up, it starts to go through that water. And as the water drains down into our drain, it actually pulls all the water out of this bed. So it's an ebb and flow bed, basically. Think about like a tide. It rises, and then it falls, and then it rises, and then it falls. And we've got the water level set so that the water level actually never gets to the top of our media here. This is an expanded clay shale. It's a porous material that will hold moisture, hold the microbacteria. It really makes it nice for rooting the plants and everything, because you can pull them out so easily without damaging the plant. If you want to transplant something, or even if you just want to harvest the plant, you can pull it out with the roots, leave the roots intact, and it'll actually help you preserve the food for longer. So, ebb and flow, fills up, drains through that siphon. Once the water level gets to a certain spot in the bed, that siphon starts to suck in air and it shuts the siphon off, and it will begin to fill again. Once it drains, it comes down into a shared drainage. Now, I was smart enough to actually already increase this shared drainage because we were having issues with the siphon. As soon as I stepped up the drainage, no more siphon issues. So we've got a lot more water moving through that drain, which helps clear that siphon faster, which helps shut the siphon off faster. That's a big problem with people that have problems with their siphons, is that they're not eliminating the water quick enough. So as the bed fills up, it just kind of continues to slurp water, and it never really ends the siphon. So once that water goes down through all 3 of these beds, these media beds, okay, all of them, again, shared drain, it's going to loop around the greenhouse, and that's where it spits out into our sump area / deep water culture raft system. Okay, so as you can see, one of our beds is siphoning right now. It's spilling out into the sump. We've got strawberry starts in there as of right now. They're doing pretty good on the beaver boards, but we're not sure what we're going to have in there. Again, the problem with this has been that we have been spitting food out into the system over here on this overflow drain. So once we're no longer spitting food into the system and we're seeing those nitrate spikes, I think we're going to actually be able to do a lot of really good greens in there. Hopefully we'll be able to grow pretty much anything. Anything that doesn't like wet feet won't be in there. It'll probably do better in the ebb and flow beds behind us. But that's going to be a lot of space that we'll be able to utilize. I mean, you can see she's got tulips in there and irises, I guess, is what's over there in the back. So she did that as an experiment, and it seems to be working well. So that is the system. The really cool thing, again, about this system, and this is one of the coolest things I've ever built and designed. I mean, I spent a lot of time in here thinking and measuring and just walking around, pacing back and forth, figuring out what we were going to do. It's the only system I've seen that is run off of a single pump but combines all three grow styles. So we have the berry tubes, we have the ebb and flow beds, and we have the raft bed. All run off of one pump. So, and I think that pump, I want to say the annual cost to run that pump is like $200 a year. So, you know, definitely affordable when you can see, you know, what it produces after just a year. Now, you got to remember, too, we don't have full-grown fish. We've got little, you know, 6, 7, 8-inch bluegill in there. Once they get bigger and they start eating more and producing more waste, this stuff is just going to be jamming. Now, I will say, greenhouse, in terms of greenhouse, things I wish I'd have done better, more ventilation. We just had to increase the ventilation along the top because it gets so hot in here. In the wintertime, it's great having a greenhouse, you know, especially with the ebb and flow beds. You know, this expanded shale actually holds and radiates heat throughout the night, which helps keep the greenhouse warm. Same thing with all the water. That water flowing through here, going in and outside, it helps keep everything warmer in here. So we've got passive radiation in here. Same thing with the blue chip rocks on the ground. All helps us, excuse me, it all helps us hold that heat overnight. The problem is in the summertime, it gets so hot that we just need more air. So you can never, I don't think you can do too much ventilation in a greenhouse. If you're going to do a system like this, you have to really be able to control every aspect. And I don't care how good you are at designing it, there's always going to be an unforeseen circumstance that you're going to have to adjust for. So if you just plan to adjust, you know, maybe put an extra fan in or an extra vent, something that'll help you push more air through. In the summertime, it will help you have a successful all year round production out of your greenhouse. So that is our system. We are proud of it. It is time to get into retrofitting. So everything's going to get, all the pumps are going to get cut off. The fish will be fine. Again, they've got air pumps in there, so they'll be okay for a couple hours. And hopefully they'll be really happy once everything's working right. So let's jump on it. Since it's quiet in here and the water is nice and still, it's a good time to show you guys our bluegill real quick. We'll also feed them. First, I'll give you a look at our guys down here in the tank. And they're hanging out. Everybody's good until there's food. Once there's food, they're like a bunch of piranha. Well, maybe not quite piranha. They've already been fed today. But usually, we can get the waters rocking and rolling. They'll splash out pretty good. But this will be a nice little break for them because they never ever really get to eat their food and chill with it. They have to eat fast, otherwise it gets sucked down that drain. So that's why we're doing the retrofit. There you go. Oh, they're rocking. Okay guys, so this is a good time to try and explain and show you the radial flow settler. I'll try and get you some good angles. That's about the best I can do without picking the camera up. It will get a little shaky when I bring you over here, but I'm going to try and give you the best idea of what's going on as I can. So here we've got our 55-gallon drum, and you can see we've got a sealed bucket on top. And what we've got going on is that creates essentially the radial flow area. That's the settling area. And now I'm going to grab you. As you can see inside this drum, we've got this pipe here, comes in from down in about halfway through the barrel, comes up, and then spits out into that bucket where it settles that waste. The water that comes out of the settler is outside the bucket, okay? So this water rises to the top after the waste is settled and goes out into the fluidized filter through a T. So it's a really simple design. It does a really effective job at settling the physical waste. I mean, you can see in here, we just cleaned this thing 2 days ago, and you can see that the physical waste is already settling on tops of the pipes and in the bottom of the barrel again. And all the water that's up here in the top of the tank is pretty much crystal clear. So very simple design, very effective at what it does. And we are going to be converting all of this into 3-inch pipe as well. So when I go through this and break it down, I'll kind of show you what's going on. Simple stuff, effective stuff. All right, we are all finished draining this guy out. And now we can expose the guts of the system to you. So what we've got, this is our piston drive pump. This is what churns up all of the media in our fluidized filter. It's just a 6-part steel manifold down here in the bottom. Got loosely hooked up that helps hold that air supply down there, but there are no stones or anything. Get this out of the way and I'll show you the guts of everything. Alright, that will work. Okay, let's take you off there. Alright, now we talked about our radial flow settler, and it spits into here. Now again, this is all gravity fed, so as the water level in here gets to a certain height, that's when it spills over down into our fluidized filter here. The fluidized filter here is just a 45-degree elbow with a spill pipe that is slotted PVC all the way around. That just prevents the K2 media down there from getting pulled up into the settler. Same thing here with our drainage pipe. Now, the idea behind this is basically a sealed pipe with the exception of a little over here for overflow. The majority of the water that we want pulled up this pipe and out into the greenhouse is going to come from below the media. So all the churning action goes on up top. And you'll see, now the media is actually pretty clean, but there's a little bit of microbacteria on each one of these little pinwheels here. And this is what, this is where our nitrifying bacteria is colonized on the inside of these wheels. And that air pump, that piston-driven pump, churns up all that media. It looks like almost like boiling pasta when it's running. So there's our manifold. It's just a steel manifold that holds that line down there. And it goes out to the greenhouse there. So all of this, again, all of this is going to be retrofitted to 3-inch. 3-inch pipe from the wall out, 3-inch pipe here, 3-inch pipe here, 3-inch pipe all the way up through those standpipes. Now, the standpipe, again, is something we should talk about because that is where we want our main flow to the greenhouse coming from. That pipe is setting on the bottom of the tank there, and it travels up to there, and it will, when it gets to this T is when it spills over, and as it fills up, it creates that siphoning action. So the water that's getting sucked out here actually starts to create a pool from the bottom, and that's what pulls a lot of our physical waste out of the bottom. Now we use a floating pellet, and the floating feed is going to sit on the top. And because we're relying on that overflow drain right there, a lot of our food is going from the surface and down that drain and spitting out into the deep water culture out there. instead of all of our water coming through this filtration system. So that explains basically the gist of our system. It explains hopefully everything that we'll be retrofitting, and we'll do some deep dives later, but I think today we're just basically going to focus on the construction and getting this thing rocking and rolling again. Okay guys, just a little bit more insight into what is in these tanks. Now I showed you guys what that standpipe did and explained how it pulls the waste from the bottom. This is basically what we've got going on in there on the inside of this fitting. This pipe right here runs into this T, okay, and then that pipe goes down all the way to the bottom of the tank where we've got a 3-inch to 1.5 inch coupling. And at the bottom of our couplings, actually what we've done is we've notched out, there's notches all the way around the brim of this. So where it sits, there's actually a little gap all the way around, with the exception of the nibs that hold it up off the bottom, that allow that water to flow through. If we have it too high up off the bottom, the fish can get under there and get sucked into our system. And if it's too low, it'll restrict the flow. So again, what I did was I just took it across the table saw, ran it across the table saw with the depth set, so that we've got little 1/2 inch notches, 4 1/2 inch notches all the way around the circumference of this adapter. And it sits right in there and allows it to create that siphon, but also gives it ample flow without the fish being able to get sucked out. So that is our standpipe. The overflow pipe, which is this drain here, is basically just a 90-degree elbow that is set where we want that water flow to max out. So we've got it set right at about 200, God, I can't remember. The bottom of our drain is at 250 gallons. So once it reaches that 250 gallons, that's where it will start to drain. But this tank will actually allow it right now to hold about 260, probably close to 270 gallons of water. So we're almost maxing out this IBC tote. So what we're going to do to mitigate any extra drainage out of this thing is I'm just going to cap off all of our overflow drains with a piece of 1.5 inch pipe. It'll just sit down in there and ensure that that is now above our water level that's in there. And then I'll be adding a cap to everywhere where our standpipes are. So once I get one of those standpipes out, I'll just kind of briefly show you. As a matter of fact, we can do that right now. I'll pull this first standpipe out and cap it. I'll show you guys what we've done. Let's see here. Okay, so here is our standpipe. And you can see we've got a healthy bit of microbacteria growing on that. But at the very bottom here, we've got those notches. So as it sits down, it's too small for the fish to get in, but it allows plenty of water to go in. So you can do that with a table saw. That's the easiest way I found to do it. But yeah, it is, again, very simple construction, very effective at its job. So I'm going to put that back in the tank just so my microbacteria doesn't dry out. And we should be good to go. We'll start knocking this thing out. Okay guys, everything's all drained out, which means it is time to start hacking stuff out of here. We're going to start with the drainage pipe. Get this overfilled drain modified, bring it down with a 45 to a lower slope, which will give us clearance for our 3-inch drainage. And I think what we're going to do is actually I'm going to start out in, well, I'll probably cut this chunk out first, then we'll jump out in the greenhouse and cut it away. Now the problem is I got my pitch set on all of these, not my pitch, but my slope, my run in my pipe is set. So when I go to cut these off, I'm actually going to have to cut them off at the fitting and then cut the old fitting away, clean up the pipe, and put my new T's and everything in there. That way we maintain the right angle to keep all of our flow up and rocking and rolling properly. So let's get to hacking. Alright, so we're just going to leave this free floating right now. We're going to retrofit all of our 3-inch first before we figure out exactly where we want to redirect this overflow drain. So once we're done with that, we'll clean everything else up, make sure this is all pretty and functional. So yeah, out to the greenhouse. Let's go cut that other piece. Alright, so this time at this connection, rather than going with a cemented fitting, we are going to go with a rubber boot. That way if I ever have to disconnect any of the filtration stuff from the greenhouse, we're good to go. We just undo this little screw and we can slide the fittings out from inside the wall. Okay, first thing we really need to do is we need to be able to get, actually, you know what, we can do this. Take the internals of our filters out. These are going to be reconstructed in 3-inch. So this is the T-pipe that goes from the bottom of our fluidized filter up and out into the greenhouse. I was telling you earlier that the majority of the water from this filter is pulled from down low, and you'll see why. All of the holes and slots down here is the only place that water can really get into the outlet unless it overflows and we have good water going in through the backup. But the K2 media will actually be up in here and churning around, and that way all of the water that passes through and goes out of here makes it through the media. So we ensure that the water is coming through the bottom of the tank. But this will be reconstructed in 3-inch. This is our radial flow filter. This is the lifter pipe that goes up into our bucket. That will be reconstructed in 3-inch. I might actually be able to pull this out without cutting it. If I can do that, it would be kind of nifty. It's just going to be quicker to cut. So we'll cut it. Much quicker. Okay. So that is our fall pipe that goes from our filter to the greenhouse. And then we have, let's see if I can get it out of here, our Uniseals. Now we've got 3-inch Uniseals that we're going to be replacing all these fittings. This is actually what seals up our fittings in between the plumbing and the tanks. They work really well. I know some people have complained online about leaking and stuff like that. If you do a good job of fitting your hole, you use a hole saw properly, it's a good tight fit. You're not going to see any leaking. Even when you wiggle around your fittings and stuff, it's pretty much tight enough that unless you do a really bad hack job of cutting your holes, it's going to seal up tight. So that's what we're using. Go ahead and finish deconstructing this thing and we will start constructing the 3-inch stuff. Okay guys, this is where we're going to wrap up part 1 of this video. The retrofit went pretty smooth, but Murphy was present and his law is constantly overbearing. So we had some adjustments that had to be made at the end, and we're gonna have to dedicate a whole part 2 to all of that so that you guys get the in-depth coverage that you deserve. So as always, thank you guys for watching. If you enjoyed this, click that little like and subscribe button. And as always, we really appreciate your support. Thank you guys for checking in, and we'll see you in the next one, part 2 coming up.